want to say Happy New Year to those ones I did not wish Happy New Year. Welcome to the New Year, and for whatever you are doing over there, and the festive season has been great. We thank God for taking us through this festive season, and yeah. So finally we are back. This is 2023. We are back with more new stuff, and we have a lot to catch up with. While you are away, guys on offline, they moved on with some of classes and they are somehow far from where you are. So where we stopped last time we stopped when we have done some good portion of CSS. I remember everyone was given a project, hoping everyone has already started on his or her project. To those ones who have managed to start, thank you so much. Those ones who haven't started, please start, because we have a lot to cover, and we are going to be using some of those projects to make sure everything is okay. So today we are starting with Sass. Okay, so I remember very well any one of you understands what is CSS. So we have been using CSS all this time, and CSS is one of the three browser languages or front-end languages: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So CSS, everyone knows, is cascading style sheet. It is what we use to describe the format and the look of the HTML. CSS is used to control the presentation of the web pages and user interfaces, including colors, font, layout, and other design elements. So we have already seen this, and we have used the CSS in many ways and a number of ways. So we want to look at how we can enhance our CSS, taking it to the next level, giving us more capability to achieve more, in regards of some of the setbacks that CSS has. We are going to see we can solve them using Sass. Okay, so Sass is a CSS preprocessor, which means it adds additional features and functionality to the standard CSS language. So it just simply is a CSS, a type of CSS, but simply adds in more features and more functionality to the CSS. So one of the main benefits is it allows us to use variables, nested rows, and mixins, functions, and many others. So this makes us to be more advanced and help us to handle the code in a more proficient way, and help us to be reusable and other things that we are going to see. So to use Sass, you need to install the Sass Compiler, which will convert your Sass code into your CSS. So the browsers do not understand Sass, they understand CSS. So what we will do is we'll be compiling Sass back to CSS after we have written. So what this means is that you have your, it's like speaking two languages. Say you speak Luganda, and then you have a translator which translates it into English. So even Sass is just like that. So you write in the Sass language, but then it compiles. Sass will compile it to back to CSS, normal CSS, because the browsers cannot understand Sass. So Sass uses different syntax than regular CSS, and in Sass, for instance, variables, we use a $sign to create variables. So you remember in CSS, if you remember very well in CSS how we used to create variables. In CSS you could create variables like this. If I'm to write here down, okay, so remember we could write our variables. You had to define something like this. In a root you define a variable. Okay, if you remember very well, this is how we used to define the variables. But right now, and you had to write it in the row. Okay, you had first put something like root, then inside this, then it's where you could find that you have to define the variables inside here. Okay, so you used to do something like this. Yeah, so this is how we used to define the variables in CSS. Okay, but right now you simply just write $, and then you put the name of the variable, and then it's value, and simple as that, you are done. Okay, so you're going to see you also use nested rules. Okay, so for instance, let's just say you can write a button like this. So you can have a button and you say background color blue, color white, font size. So if you wanted to do hover, instead of doing hover on a separate line, you continually use this ampersand symbol, then you put hover, it will do the hover within the same button. Okay, so with that, we can look at very many parts. Let me create here a project we are going to play around with. Okay, so I'm just going to create here something like 2023 this one is and inside them I'm just going to put lesson 1, which is introduction to Sass. Okay, so I'm just going to open this in VS Code. Let me first close this other project. Okay, so I'm opening my project in VS Code. Just write index.html. So it's creating HTML for me. Okay, so the file is ready now. So of course we would do style.css as usual. Okay, so we have our two files. We have the index.html and we have our style.css. So I'm just going to create a boilerplate for HTML where we can start from. my VS Code is still activating some stuff. Finally it is back. So here I'm just going to say Sass. Okay, so let's just do some stuff. For instance, the heading. So just say right like H1. You can see my okay. So let me just say here heading 1, and in fact let's just write a div, and let's just say a header first. Inside the header I'm just going to put there, for instance, the logo, not a div, a.logo, and then you can have the links. Just call them nav links. About us, and so many other things. Services. Products. Okay, so we could just say we have this. This is a normal HTML. Okay, and we could say also, we could also come here and we put a button. Okay, let me say my button. Okay, so you can also give it maybe a class, maybe button from. Okay, so we have this, and if I look at this in the browser, so it is loading in the browser. So let's just give it a minute. It's starting, yeah, and finally we have it here in the browser. Okay, fine. So let's just link our CSS and we start giving it some styles. So down here I'm just going to say link CSS. So under normal circumstances we would first go and do a browser reset. Okay, do a browser reset, and in fact we could first do variables. So first do like variables, because in the browser set we can actually use some variables. So in the variables we could define our primary color. So how would we define in CSS? We would say root, and this idea we could just say, for instance, primary, and then we say maybe blue. Okay, this is how we define. We can just go ahead and say secondary, and we could say something like yeah, something like that. And we could do also light, and we just say C. Okay, and then we could also go and do maybe dark. Let's just say do success, and we do green, and let's just do one more, which is going to be maybe error, which is going to be red. So this is how we used to define our variables, and we could just come here and we say in the browser reset. So in the browser reset, we select star and we say margin 0, padding 0, and box sizing border box. Okay, of course we could just say here, even just define that, for instance, font, maybe we just say body font, and we could just come here and we define maybe, let's just say do maybe consolas. Okay, and there's sounds really okay. Just do consolas as our font body, and you could just say font family here, and you could say var body font. So this is how we used to write variables. Okay, so another thing, now we start, for instance, our header, and here you just give us a background color. So background color, let's say var. So we used to do this var color. So color primary, like so. And I think you just call it light. Just say light. Remember we have light, just like that. Okay, that is how we used to put variables. Okay, then number 2, we would now style the header. So if we say header styles, so in the header styles we would do this. We would first say header, and for instance we could just say background color, and we could just say choose var primary, not primary but secondary. Okay, let's just say padding 1 ram top and bottom, and on the side is maybe 3. And let's say display flex, line item center, and let's also do justify content center. Okay. Now if we want to select the anchor tags that are inside to remove, for instance, so we'll do something like header and anchor tag. We select the anchor tag inside, and we say maybe text decoration none. Okay, text decoration none. And so far, if we go to the browser, this is what we have. Okay, so if we wanted to give some color, what we do is change like the color here. We could say from here color white. I just say color var to light. Okay, so it would be something like that. Let's say Yeah, we need to put space between, I guess. And I can see as if my background color oh, I think it is because of this. So let's just put the background color on the body, maybe only. Okay, so the problem, now you can see everything is okay now. Okay, so far we are doing good. Okay, so let me just take this body on top here before the header. Okay, so if we wanted to do some other things, for instance, for the nav links, if I wanted nav links to have color primary, for instance, I would choose go to nav links. So you'd say, for instance, nav links, not capital like that, nav links, and I would select nav link. Okay, so I can just do this, or I can even choose A there. So you can just see here color, for instance, var primary. Okay, this is primary. Let me check if I have primary. Yeah, so you could do that, and I guess they could change. For some reason it is not changing. Okay, let me select what is the stuff. Oh, it is code link, not nav link. It is code link. That's why I like copying, not assuming. Okay, so far we have them like that. So on hover, if wanted on hover for this, we would put on the new line, and we say nav link hover. Okay, and then maybe we change the color back to light. Back to light, and we could come in and put a transition of 0.5 seconds. Okay, so you can see it is actually doing what we want. Okay, and then let's work on the button, and we could go on and so forth, but then this is exactly what we don't want in the. So this kind of, first of all, this kind of naming variables is hectic. Okay, it is not user friendly in reading and even in writing. Okay, so let's first see how do we transform this code into Sass. Okay, so how do we transform this code into Sass, for instance? So the first step to go to Sass, the first step is that we are going to use an extension for now. So there is extension that we are going to use to compile the Sass. As we said, the browsers don't understand Sass. So what we want is we are going to be writing in Sass, and then the code is converted back into CSS. So step one, install the VS extension. So just come here and you choose Sass Compiler. So search here as Sass Compiler. Now there are many Sass compilers. There are two basically. There is Live Sass Compiler. Actually, it is Live Sass Compiler. What you should search here, Live Sass Compiler. So Live Sass Compiler, there is this old one. I can actually uninstall this. There is this old one by Retweak Day. This one stopped working. Okay, this one stopped working. So just input Live Sass Compiler by Glenmax. Make sure that the one that you are going to install, Live Sass Compiler, is by Glenmax. This is the one you are going to be using. Okay, so install this this compiler and you'll be good to go. So after you have installed that compiler, what you are going to see is that when you come down here, so you just come, instead of creating this one, we are going to leave our CSS for now for comparison. So I'm just going to create another one, which is going to be style.scss. So Sass has an extension, as we have CSS, has an extension for SCSS. It is not CSS, it is SCSS. If I can zoom in properly here. So if I zoom in, you can see that it is having an extension of SCSS. Okay, so make sure you have here SCSS. Okay, so the first thing, let's look at, so some code remain the same. So what you do is, let's write some CSS inside it. So all the normal CSS remains. So for instance, we are going to start, let me just do, for instance, browser reset, and you can see I can say margin 0, padding 0, and box sizing, border box. Okay, so you can see this remains. We also get auto completion as usual. So everything looks normal at this point. Okay, but then, so the first thing is start with variables. And by the way, so before we go very far, after you have created your Sass file, you will see now there is a button down here called Watch Sass. If you don't see this button, that means your extension did not work. Go back and make sure you have installed your extension properly. But if you install it properly, then on down here after creating this Sass file, you should get this button that says Watch Sass. Okay, so now what I want you to do is, we haven't written actually much code. So what I want us to do is, I want to click on this button, which is Watch Sass. Okay, and then let me first change this, our style. Let me change this style here. Let me rename it so that it is no longer working. So if I'm just going to call it main.css. Okay, just going to call it main.css. So if we go back to the browser, all the changes are gone. Okay, so now what we want, we have our style.css. Now I want to press this button Watch Sass, and you see what it is going to do. So when you click this button Watch Sass, now for me it creates a folder called CSS, and inside it creates there a folder, a file called style.css. And if you look, it has compiled this code here, the browser reset, it has compiled it into CSS. Okay, you can see it has done for us this fixing, box sizing, because it's a new feature. You can see it has even does this WebKit fixing for us. So we write the code here, and then it is compiling this code into CSS. And you can see now the button is saying watching Sass. So anything you do right now, if we add anything, for instance, if we say header, if we just say header, and inside, let's say we say background color aqua. So if you save that and you go to another file, you will see that it says success. Okay, so it has also compiled that. So if we check in the CSS, you can see it has compiled it. Okay, this is great so far. So what we want is, if you check in our browser, all these things are not working. So first of all, where are we? We have to first connect to the right CSS. So there is this SCSS, and then there is the compiled CSS from this SCSS. So make sure that what you are connecting is the compiled CSS. Now, in your case, it is not going to create a folder called CSS and put inside the style.css. It is going to create another file here called style.css. Me, I have another setting that I have done to put in this folder for purposes of making the code clean. But in your case, it is going to create a file style.css in the same directory. So whatever name you put here, it is what it is compiled this side. So if you put here main.css, SCSS, it will compile into style main.scss. So you have to know that the name you put here is the name that will be compiled this side. Okay, so another thing is you must make sure you are connected to the compiled CSS. So right now we are connecting to style.css, which is not there. So I'm just going to say my CSS is located into folder of CSS, then inside CSS, then inside I have style.css. So if I connect this now, I go to the browser, you can see it is now working. It is using these styles now. Okay, so let's start converting back what we did here. So let's start with variables. Okay, so I'm just going to go to this CSS. So we had all these variables we did at first. So how do we do variables in Sass? So all these variables, okay, I'm just going to come to this side. Let me close this. So here, instead of here on top, we are going to put variables. Okay, so say variables. Okay, and if I wanted to create a primary variable, okay, so we have how many variables? Let me just copy this so that I can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to create here something here. I don't know if I can create a marked line. Okay, let me just paste them here. Okay, so instead of using dash primary, you simply change all these ones into $sign. So it becomes $primary, and I can highlight all these ones at once, and I put a dollar there. Okay, so you see now we just simply do $primary to mean that this is now the variable for a primary color. There is no need to put them in the root. Simply put dollar and put the name of the variable, as simple as that. Okay, so done. So we have converted all our variables, and you can see it is much simpler than how we define these ones. Okay, good. So let's move on. So in the browser set, you see now we have font family. So if I copy this and I come here, so in the browser set, we have where we're saying font family is equal var -- body font. So we don't need to do this anymore. Simply copy this. So we just simply put now $body font. Okay, so you simply just put here $body font, and the variable is in. Just as simple as that. So if we check now in our browser, you can see all the font have changed. Okay, let's move on. So to the body, we had background color equal to var light. So we don't need to do that now anymore. So down here, if you say background color var instead of var, simply change this to $light. $light. Simple as that. So you simply call this variable here. So if we check now in the browser, everything is okay. Okay, we move on. Let's continue to now header. Okay, so let's first copy this part of the header. Okay, so now this is we're going to see the second part of so instead of var secondary, we are going to put here secondary $secondary. Okay, so of course all others, they remain just like so. If we do that, you see we have this. Okay, so now we're going to see the second feature of, so we have already seen the first feature of Sass, which is variables. So let's look at the second feature, which is called nesting. So I'm just going to put here nesting. So nesting means is writing the code like the way we write it in HTML. So you see, we say in the header, and then you go inside, you put this, and then inside you put this, inside you put this. So in other words, you are nesting things inside the other. So if we wanted to do now what we did here, for instance, instead of writing this, let me just copy this so that we can see. So instead of writing this header and you say anch tag, so you go inside, because this anch tag is inside the header, so you just simply continue inside and you say a, okay, and then we do text decoration, and this whole thing we have done here. So text decoration none, and this variable we call it line, $line. So we no longer want this kind of writing where we have header then this. So right now you simply write the way it is in HTML. Okay, so you're saying inside the header I have an anch tag, and it is going to work. If right now we go, you see that the color have changed. Okay, because inside even here in the, that's how it is, you have the header and then you have these anch tags. So basically this means that go inside the header, okay, go inside the header and select the anch tag, and you can see we are still inside the header. Okay, so if we wanted, for instance, the hover inside this anch tag, it becomes now very easy. So let's first continue converting this code. So here you can see we have, for instance, this code here. So let me copy this code and bring it down here so that we can see how it is going to change. So here you can see we are saying go to nav links, and inside the nav link select the link tag, but then this nav links is inside the header. So instead of putting the nav link on its own line, we go inside the header and we select the nav links, nav links inside the header. Okay, and then inside this nav links we want to select the link. So go inside the nav links and it says dot link. So you can see now it becomes easy to understand that the link you're trying to access is inside the nav links. Okay, so these ones, okay, these ones cut this and let's put them here, and their color let's put just $premium. Okay, okay, so yeah, so we are doing well so far. So you see, this is what we call nesting. So you're writing tags inside the other. So you have the header, inside you have an anch tag, and then you still also have the nav links, and inside the nav link you have the link. Okay, so this part whereby we have nav link hover here, we don't need to do this. Okay, so if we wanted to do hover color light, okay, you go inside the link, and inside the link you just put a this ampersand. So there is this symbol called ampersand. You can find it on button 7, and do hover. Okay, and then you say color light, and here we can change it to $light. Okay, so look at this. This is what you call nesting. Okay, so if you go now, we have the same, actually the same code working the way it was in the beginning. Okay, okay, so this is good. This is good so far. So this is what you call nesting. This is what we call nesting. So if we go and check the compiled CSS, you see it is actually doing the whole conversion. Where you say font family, you see font family is putting consolas. It is picking the variables, and all this, like Flexbox, it is doing for us all this fixing. Okay, and you can see it is doing this whole thing. It does in CSS header, nav links, link, and doing all this one, okay, of which we don't have to do. So for us, we focus on writing the good code in Sass, and you don't have actually to keep on checking this side unless you have any problem. Every time you do, you can see it is watching. Every time you do changes in this style.scss, it makes changes that side. Okay, so you just go. So now at this point, you can see that our header is actually in one block, just one block like that. So just continue to do buttons. Okay, so let's do button. So for instance, we had our button. So it is the button. So after the header, we have some button. So okay, we have a button called btn primer. So we could come here and we do a btn primer. So down here we could just say maybe components, and let's just do dot btn primary, as simple as that. So btn primary, we could start with the color. So we just say background color primary, $primary, $primary. Is there any problem I've done? Let me see. Seeing this property value expected. Okay, what do we have? Oh, I'm writing in the wrong place. Sorry guys, not here. Cut this. Just actually close this. We are done with this. So just go to our SCSS. Make sure you're writing your code in SCSS. So down here, I'm just going to have components. Like components, these are like smaller parts that we use, like buttons, cards, blah blah, all those kind of stuff. So I want to put here like for instance the button. Okay, so we could have like a button primary, which is having background color primary, and of course we could have also the btn class. Okay, so we could have dot btn, and we could for instance give it padding top and bottom, maybe 1 rem, and on the side is, let's say 3 rem. This is going to be big. And font size, they just give here also font size. They just say about 1.5 rem, and let's give it in CSS. Let's give this also btn. So say btn, okay, and we see how our button is changing. So you can see already the primer is working, and even the font size. So could you change the primary? We could give it color white. Okay, we just say color $light. Tone will change. Okay, that is great. And you could also give it maybe on the btn, we can just say border none. Okay, could just say border none, and let's also give some okay, some margin, top and bottom 1 rem. Just say do 1 rem, and on this one let's give it a border radius of maybe 10 pixels. That seems to be much, maybe 5. Just want a very small minimum. Okay, that one is great. So just give it cursor pointer. Okay, that is great. Yep. So you can see we have our button. So if we wanted to do hover on this button primary, and so we could do this hover. So you see, use ampersand. I set it on button 7, just to do that, and then say hover. Okay, and inside we could change the background color to dark blue. Okay, let's change this to dark blue. So now if we go to hover, you can see it is actually hovering, and even the color is changed this color to white. Okay, so for instance, let's change the color to white, and we could go ahead and do this transition maybe 0.5 seconds, and you can just also do easy out. Okay, so now you see it is doing this whole changing. Okay, so great. So we have seen two features so far. I think 3 features. The first feature is variables, the second one was nesting, and the third one, you can see how we are doing this, the hovers using the ampersand. Okay, so that is great. So now the last feature I want to talk about in this before I end this lesson is we want to do, so just to minimize this. So what we want to do is we want to change and bring in what we call partials. Okay, so the third one is partials. Okay, so what are partials? So partials are actually files. So partial files is a small file or is a branch file that you create, that if you compile it on the compilation, it will compile the code from the branch and it brings it back into this main CSS. So what do I mean? Let's just read it by example. So I'm just going to create here another file. Make sure you are inside here in the directory, and I'm just going to create another file, for instance, for variable. So as the project grows, you will find you have like 20, 30, 40 variables. Okay, they can grow bigger as the project is increasing. So you can imagine only colors, we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors, and all these colors are going to be having the light version of them and the dark version of them. So already colors, if they are each color is going to have more too, so like you're going to have 15 variables for only colors. So you can see that the file it becomes pretty big. It becomes so big only for variables. So what we do is these we separate them into different files so that we can manage our code, because in CSS that is one problem. You find you have 9,000 lines, you have 8,000 lines, and if you are trying to figure out where you want to make changes, it is very hard to know where am I going to make changes. Like you are making a small change, but it's hard to actually get to where you want to make the changes very fast. So Sass comes with this feature called partials. So you can put all these small parts of the code inside their own file so that you can manage them properly from there. So for instance, let me create a file and I put my variables there. So right now I'm just going to go here and create a new file, and I put it with an underscore. So you start partial file with an underscore, and let's give it a name, for instance, variables dot scss. Okay, so you can see it starts with an underscore. Please, it is not a mistake that I'll put this underscore. Make sure you put this underscore, and then you put the name of the file you want to call. So if it is variables, it is good you put them in variables.scss. And let me just rename it to variables, not variable, variables. Okay, so you can see I have variables.scss, and now I'm just going to cut all my variables and I put them there. So let me cut, and this one is going to cause an error, and I want you to intentionally see that error. So I'm just going to put back up this terminal. I don't know if you have realized that it brings here the terminal showing the output. Okay, let me just drag this like this. So I want to cut it and then I put it inside variables. Okay, like so. And you can see there is here saying error. It brings an error, and by the way, be careful to see these errors. Some people don't see that error and they keep saying my thing is not working. So make sure it brings in errors. For instance, you can see compilation error, and they said undefined variable font family body font, and it goes to watching but is saying it can't see this variable. Okay, and you can see it has a red here. And if you go down back this side, you might see actually that we still have blue, because in our CSS that was compiled, that color is still there. If you go to the CSS, the primaries and the blues are already there. That's why it is still working. But here it cannot compile the changes. So what we are going to do is, we have these variables, we have put all our colors here. So we can bring these variables back into this style. So on top here, I'm just going to say variables, okay, spelling of variables. So down here, I'm just going to, how do I bring them? So here we're going to see another keyword called @import. So we use a feature called @import, and so you import and then you put double quotes, and in the double quote put the name of this file, the partial file. So for instance, variables, and then at the end put semicolon like this. So now if you save and you compile, so you want to see here compile, so when you save, you can see there is success here. Okay, and now if you go back, of course it might not show any changes, but to know that it is working, let's change like our primary. Let's change our primary to sky blue. So we can change this to sky blue. Okay, let's change it to sky blue and see if there are changes. So you can see the changes have been made. Okay, you can change this even to aqua. Okay, so that we know that actually it is working. So you can see it is working, it is compiling these variables, and now you can see the file is now going to be manageable. Okay, you can always close this one. So you can see the variables are in its own file, and we can manage all these variables from here. So this is great, and this is really wonderful. We can manage these files from these small files. For instance, if I wanted the font now to be maybe Montserrat, or if I wanted it to be Poppins, so I would come and I change this to Poppins. Yes, from here, and you can see it has changed it to Poppins. Okay, just leave back my consoles. Okay, like so. Okay, that is one thing that we have seen. So this is how you bring in those files, the partial files. Okay, so let me go ahead and also put this, for instance, this browser reset and the body, let's put them inside a file called, for instance, global. So I will just go here and create another file, and I call it global. Okay, globals.scss. Make sure you start with an underscore. Okay, make sure you start with an underscore. Okay, and then what we can do is, if you don't want to cause an error on compilation, you can just come here and bring in the globals, and you say @import, and you put double quotes, and then you say globals. You don't have to put .scss. I repeat, you don't have to put this header.scss. Just put globals, as simple as that. So let's cut all this code, cut it, and let's put it inside these globals. As simple as that. And now everything is okay. If you check in our browser, we have not broken anything. And let's put our primary to be blue here. And you can see everything is still fine the way we did it. Okay. So now these files can sometimes be many. Okay. So sometimes you don't have to just simply put them here. So for instance, we want to have for sections. So for instance, you see we have the header. So let me just close this one. So for instance, you see we have like this header. So you're going to have header section, you're going to have hero section, you're going to have service section. So we can create a folder for sections, for instance. So we can just say sections. So we create a folder called the sections, and inside the sections here we can create there our partials. So for instance, the header.scss, as simple as that, and then we can bring it in. So how do we connect to this file? Okay, so we go down here and we can say header styles, and we can just say at import, and now double quotes. Now we are importing from sections, so you first write sections and inside you put header. So you can see I've put this folder is this one. So I'm saying I go inside the sections and then get this. Don't forget to put this double the semicolons, so I can bring in my header styles like that. And now I can cut this. So this header, all of it, I can cut it, and I can just put inside the header like so. And everything is still working properly the way we did. But now it is manageable, right? So right now it's manageable. You can just go to header styles and you can change all these things the way you want. So instead of here, you could even say here, for instance, $primary, you could change this one to a primary color, and as simple as that, you would have your header changed like so. Okay, so you have control over all your code. And as we are just going on, even components, you can put a folder to handle our components. For instance, the buttons. So let me just create another folder. As we have sections, I'm just going to create another folder called components. So create another one called components, and inside the components we are going to put buttons. So for instance, say buttons.scss. Okay, so I'm just going to go here and import in the style.scss. So these ones, I'm just going to say components, and let me bring in the button. So add import, okay, double quotes, and you go to components. Inside the components, you bring the button. Okay, as simple as that. And don't forget to put the semicolon at the end. So let's cut this code here. Let's cut this code and we'll put in the buttons. So right now, you see, we have our buttons in their own file. And this is all just to simplify your life about how you troubleshoot your application. Okay, so you have the buttons alone. So you can now go ahead and create, for instance, a secondary button. So let me just copy this, and I want to get a secondary button on this. So I'm just going to come here and I say here btn secondary. Okay, so background color instead of primary, let's put here secondary. Color light, we can maintain that, but on hover we can just say maybe black. Okay, we can try black, and the color white is okay. So to see that in action, we can create a second button, and we call it second. So do this here, and btn second. Btn secondary spelling, guys. And I can just even change this one into primary button, primary button, and then this one to secondary here. I'll show you if I see the spelling. Secondary. Okay, so if now we go to the browser, you see we have two buttons just made out of the reusable code, and you see we have a one file where we can manage all our buttons. You can have as many buttons as you can, but you see that we actually have all these buttons in one file. So if there is anything you want to change these buttons in the future, you don't actually have to go this side, go the other side, and look here and there. You simply come to these buttons, and then everything will be fine. Okay, so and this file here that is being compiled, you would never want to touch it. The only thing is just link it in the CSS, and everything now will be okay. Okay, so we have our buttons, and now you look at the main file. So in the main file we only have the inputs. Okay, in the main file we have only inputs. We are bringing in the variables, we are bringing in the globals, we are bringing in the header styles. Okay, and then here we are bringing in the components, and the components, they can go as far as cards. So for instance, if you wanted to create in the future, you can create for instance cards. So you can just come here and create a new file, and you see cards, you can just say cards.css. okay, so you create the cards, and then you can right away come and in the styles and import them here under components. So I can just say this, put here, and then here you can just say cards. As simple as that. So if we went in this side and we created a card, so let me go in HTML and just create one card for purposes of looking at this how it works. So if I put here cards, so let's look at cards. So if I created a card, for instance here, let me just say cards, and inside here you're going to have a card, and inside the card, for instance, you have a card header, and probably maybe let's make it okay. So you just have the card has three parts: the card header, and then it has the body and the footer. Okay. Card body, and then it also have card footer. Okay. So in the header we could put something like h2. Okay, and I say card heading. Okay, and here in the body, let's put like a p tag with rolling, just rolling, and in the footer, let's put like some links. Okay, so like a dot card link. So you just say card link, and we could just say link 1. Okay, so now what is we have basics. So now let me just duplicate this to be like three links. So if we went to our CSS, we have something like this, nothing fancy, just like that. So we can go in the cards and start working on the cards. So start with, like, for instance, the cards, and we say, for instance, this prefix. Okay, and we can just even stop there, and then we say we have a card inside. Okay, we have a card inside, and for instance we can give this one a width of 18 rem. Okay, and then we can give it a border of 1 pixel solid, maybe I say dollar primary. So you can of course continue using our CSS variables. Okay, and then you can go ahead. So if we check it now, you see how it is looking like. Let's give it some padding, 1 rem top and bottom, and let's put 2 rem. And let's give also a border radius of maybe 5 pixels. Okay, like so. And I think that width is not good. Let's make it 20 rem. Okay. Yeah. I can just make it more 30. Width. 25. So just make it 25. Yeah, looks okay. And yep, so you can see we have our card. Actually, yesterday, let's put like 2 cards. Let's put 2 cards so that we have an idea of how they are going to look like. Okay, so here we can come and give a gap of 1 rem. Okay, and you can see our card is now okay. So you can just of course go ahead, and in the card you can access the header, for instance. So you can just say card header, and then you can just say, for instance, background color, you want it to be primary. Do the primary, and color of course you can make it white. Okay, and you can see you have this kind of effect right now. You can go ahead and work on the links, blah 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 blah. So but you get the whole concept. The cards now, they are in their own file. Okay, the cards are in their own file. So then how do you handle responsive in terms of how do you handle responsive? How do we handle for instance, if we inspect, of course the cards are not going to be responsive. Okay, but then instead of creating its own file, we can actually do responsive within this file. Okay, you don't have to write down at media. So we will do this at media, and maybe you could just say max width. Okay, at maybe at 480 pixels. Okay, we would go ahead and make the cut. Okay, we would make the cut maybe dot cut to have a width of 100%. You do something like this. Okay, you do something like this. I don't think if it can actually work, but let me see the size we are on. We are on 388. It should work actually. So now, of course, here we are not given in terms of percent. So if we the card here, width we had given it about 40%. This would make sense. And then, but then this is not how we handle it. Okay, instead of writing its own place, you simply cut this. Okay, so cut this and go where the card is. Okay, so here we have the card and you have width 40%. So inside the card itself, you can actually target at media. Okay, so you say at media, only screen and max width equal to 480 pixels. You don't need to write the card now because you're in the card, and you could change the width and you say 100%. Okay, as simple as that. And even for this one, the cards, to make them, of course here we can just say flex. We could just say flex wrap. So flex wrap, simple as that. So you can see now we have our cards being responsive. Okay, so at 480, first of all, they are wrapping, and at the same time they are occupying 100% on this one. So you can see we are writing the media query within actually that very component, which is impossible. You cannot do this nesting of media queries in CSS. So this is another powerful feature that you can always use. You look at that. So you already have a responsive structure already with that. Okay, so this is great so far. You see how you can handle this whole thing. Okay, so before I end, let's work on one thing, which is typography. So I'm also going to create here another file called typography. So typography is where we handle all the font related things. So remember, you can just come here and say so down here I'm just going to create typography.scss, and now in the typography, of course, you can target things like what is going to be the font size of my H1, all those kind of stuff. So this is where you can define your heading ones or your big headings, small headings, you have section headings and all that kind of stuff. But the only trick I want to show you is actually about HTML. So under normal circumstances, let me first do this. So font size, I will say 100%. Now under normal circumstances, if you check, we said one rem for what we know is one rem is equal to 16 pixels. Okay, one rem is equal to 16 pixels, and if you want to confirm this, there is in the buttons, if you go to components and then you go to the buttons, you see that we have somewhere font size. Okay, so 1.5 times 16, you can do the math. But then if we come to here, let's inspect, click on this, click on the buttons, and look at the CSS down here. So I'm just going to look at the CSS. So buttons, font size is 1.5 rem. If I click on compute it, they will compute for me, and you will see that for the button, font size is 24 pixels. Okay, yeah, so that is the computation. But then so that means here, let me first close all these other files, close all these ones. I remain with only one I want to do. So let me first bring in typography here. You can put here typography. and I think typography should be on top, because you can find you are using them maybe in some other places. So globals, and by the way, variables should always be the first on top. I'm not doing it by mistake. Variables should always be the first, and then globals should be the second, and then we can put typography. Okay, so you say at import, and we are importing the typography. So be aware of typo or spellings. For instance, if I use typography here, make sure it is what you have here. Okay, so now in the typography, what we are trying to calculate around here right now is font. Right now, 1 rem is equal to 16. And why is it like so? Normally, the default font size is what goes as 1 rem. So if the default is 10 pixels, 1 rem will be 10 pixels. If the default is 16 right now, the default is 1 rem will be 16. In other words, when the font size is equal to 100%, like 16 pixels, the font size is 100%. So we could just say this one is equal at the same time 100%. So 16 pixels is the default font size, is the 100% of the font size. Okay? But we all believe that if someone came and says that, for instance, that the font size of a button is 3.86, and he asks you what is the pixels, that whole calculation whereby we are calculating like 3.56 rem, you would ask yourself, this one is equal to what? Okay, this is equal to what? So this one is very hard to calculate off the head, okay, because of this 16. So our goal now is to convert this 16 into 10. Okay, what I want to do in this lecture is I want to convert this 1 rem, instead of 16 pixels, I want it to be 10 pixels. Okay, I want it to be 10, so that if they say 3.56, this becomes 35.6 pixels. Okay, you simply multiply by 10 and the calculations becomes easy. Okay, so the question is, how do we convert it to this? So this rem here, we are not interested in it actually, because we said whatever is going to be the default is what will equal to 1 rem. Okay, if the default is 16, 1 rem will be 16. If the default is 10 pixels, the 1 rem will equal 10. So what we do is, how do we change 16 into from 16 pixels to 10 pixels? And sure, this is, so here the calculation to make it easy is to say, if 16 pixels is equal to 100%, what will be 10 pixels? Okay, so 10 pixels, of course, they will be something like 10 over 16, then times what? Times 100. This is how we will get this. So if you calculate, you will get something like 62.5. So you can use your calculator and calculate this, but this answer is equal to 62.5. So by default, as we said, if you change the percentage here, 100% is equal to 16, which is same as equal to 1 rem. So if you change to this one right now, 65, still this is going to be equal to 1 rem. So we said we simply change the default percentage from 100, whichever percentage, and you will have 1 rem. And this is going to be very powerful. So right now, instead of saying font size is equal to 100, we can just say font size is equal to 62.5%. So what does this do? What this does is it changes all the rem from 16 pixels to 10 pixels. So if we go back you realize all the things have changed. The font size have reduced, and if you check the font size here of the button is now 14.35. okay, it is 14.35. Let me see, font size 14, and it is because of this. So if you go to the buttons, let's go to the buttons, they have this 1.5 should come to 15 pixels. That's what we want. Let me first check the buttons. Click on the buttons. Okay, click on the buttons, and you can see font size is 15 pixels. Okay, font size become 15 because we said now it is very easy to calculate. If I wanted 22, I would say 2.2. If I wanted it to be 22 pixels, okay, I would do 2.2, and if you check, it will just change. If we go ahead and click on the button, you see now it is 22 pixels. Okay, and this is very powerful. This is very powerful. How we can make the whole website responsive minus even writing the whole of these ones. Let me show you what I mean. So for instance, that means that if we had a heading, so let me just go back and write a heading down here in HTML. Where is my HTML? So go to HTML, and down here let's write a heading too, and let's give it a class section heading. Let's give it, for instance, a class of section heading, and these are a class you can have, and then you can just say this is section heading, and let's also have a paragraph, which is just going to be also class of section paragraph. Section class section paragraph, and just like that, and just put rem 30 just for testing purposes. So we have two classes. So in other words, if we came here in typography, okay, to make this one responsive, I would come here and I said to this section heading, and let me give it a font size of 3 rem. This is going to be 30 pixels. In fact, let me make it 50. So 5 rem, this one, surely it will be 50 pixels. And the section paragraph, let's give it a font size of 18 pixels. So this will be 1.8 rem. Okay, so if we check, you can see everything is looking fine. Okay, everything is looking fine until we go to responsive design. So you see, in responsive design, if we check this heading, it is still actually having font size 5 rem. Okay, if you compute this side, it's going to have a 50 pixel rem. Okay, and if you check for this one, if I come and I click on this, you can see that the font size is 18 rem. So you would do this to make a media query. For instance, you would write a media query here at media, and you say at max width 480 pixels, you would just say font size. Okay, font size, maybe you want it to reduce it to 3 rem, to 30 pixels, maybe 3 rem, just try that. Okay, this would work, it would change it, 3 rem. Okay, and we could do this also for the section paragraph. At 480, we would change this maybe to 1.2 or to 1 rem. Okay, like so. So this is responsive, okay? This is responsive, which has no problem. But then it means that every time you're having headings, you are going to write all these media queries to individually affect this. But if I told you we don't need all this to make this one responsive, so instead we could change the percentage of RAM. Okay, so let me remove this one, even this one, let me remove it. So it goes back to the original one, like so. So to make this responsive, instead we would change only here the percentage. Okay, so for instance, I would say font size. Instead here at 480, I would say font size is equal to 50%. Okay, this 50%, of course, it would go back and compute from this one. So if we do that, you see that it is reducing. So I can go ahead and say here maybe 45. You can actually have the perfect calculation if you wanted, but then you see now everything that is having RAM is actually affected. Look at our buttons. As you are reducing, even everything that is having RAM is actually affected. So this can be a one trick you can use to make your responsive, all of your website responsive using this trick. Okay, you simply change the RAM or the font size percent at different screens, and this is going to affect whether buttons, whether cards, whether what, everything that is written in RAM, it is going to be affected. Look at this, we have our stuff even on very small screens very much responsive, and on a big screen we still have this. So this trick can make your life very easy. You don't have to go and change the individual ones, you only change in one place. Okay, so this is great, and I don't know, this video I might also post it on YouTube. Okay, I might post it on YouTube if all goes well, but it will be in the class WhatsApp, and you will find the link there to those ones who have not attended. Okay, so thank you so much. This closes today's lesson. Okay, it closes today's lesson. If you have any questions, you can send them in the WhatsApp group, and on YouTube you can comment in the description. So you are going to have 1 or 2 more lessons about Sass, and then we'll just continue to JavaScript. Okay, yeah, so we're trying to move with time, so we are going to have 1 more lesson with Sass. Maybe we look at mixins, and then we can now go ahead and start JavaScript. Okay, that's it. See you in the next class. Thank you so much.